3 years after our separation. My ex-wife walked into the store with a young boy to shop for clothes. She froze for a brief moment when she saw me. I greeted her as I always did with customers. Polite, composed, with every boundary drawn exactly where it belonged. I didn't bring up the past. Not even once. After a short silence, she reached out and gently held my deformed fingers. Does it still hurt? I calmly adjusted my sleeve to cover them and told her everything was fine, as if nothing between us had really changed, except that we were no longer in love. That was all. It was not true. I lowered my gaze and stared at the deformed bones in my fingers. On rainy days, the pain would keep me awake the entire night. Maybe in the past, I would have exaggerated it on purpose just to make her worry. Maybe I would have used the injury to coax a kiss out of her. But now I would not. After all, no one would keep degrading themselves forever. Sadie Knight bit her lower lip and let out a soft sigh. Ian, lying isn't a good habit. You used to be afraid of pain. I lowered my brows, masking my emotions. You said it yourself. That was the past. She looked a little helpless, as if she wanted to take my hand the way she used to. Bad man, Mommy. Don't touch him. Daddy will hear about this. Ethan Walker charged forward and slammed into me. Then he bit down hard on my thigh. A dull, numbing pain spread through my leg. Get away. This is all your fault. If it weren't for you, Mommy wouldn't be mad at Daddy. Daddy hates you. Don't you dare seduce my mommy. Don't buy anything from him. His stuff is dirty and disgusting. Let him starve. With that, he grabbed a pair of scissors from the table and rushed at me again. Ethan, stop. Sadie yanked him back, losing her temper for the first time. Apologize. I won't. If it weren't for him, Daddy wouldn't be sad. It's all his fault. Ethan glared at me defiantly, ready to lunge again at any moment. Looking at the child I had once raised with my own hands, at that little face that looked so much like mine, I felt nothing in particular. If anything, it was faintly absurd. Sadie's expression darkened as she dragged him in front of me, forcing him to call me Dad. He clenched his tiny fists, his face screaming resistance. No, he's not my dad. My dad is taller and more handsome. He's nothing like this ugly man. It'd be better if he died that way. Daddy Finn would be happy. Ethan. Sadie's hand trembled as she gripped his. I calmly stepped in and diffused the situation. He's just a child. There's no need. A title is only a label. I don't need your fake kindness. Ethan shoved me hard and started crying into his smartwatch. Sadie twisted the hem of her dress, then turned back to me with a conflicted look. Ethan. She rubbed her wrist tiredly. Forget it. When do you get off work? I'll wait for you. No need. I deliberately put some distance between us and bent down to clean up the mess. Your husband should still be waiting at home.
Oh, my.
Miss Knight, you're here. The store manager came out from the back. He gave me a disdainful kick before plastering on a fake smile. We've got quite a few new arrivals. You looking to pick something out for your husband again? The suit you ordered last time is ready, too, if you'd like to take a look. We're a bit short-staffed, so we hired a clumsy employee. If you don't like him, I'll have him leave immediately. Sadie did not respond. She just stared straight at me as if waiting for me to say something. In my defense, unfortunately, she was bound to be disappointed. I simply continued doing what I was supposed to do in silence. After a long moment, her eyes reddened. No need. He's fine. The manager chuckled, kind as ever. Miss Knight, this guy's got sticky fingers. I wouldn't keep him if I had the choice. Your husband even said last time that he stole a luxury watch in public. Must be desperate from poverty. At that, he shot me a sideways glance as if granting me mercy. Since Miss Knight has spoken, you can stay. I gave a quiet hum, unmoved. Suddenly, Sadie stepped on the tip of my shoe, her beauty almost suffocating. Ian Corbett, say something. When I didn't respond, she grew more urgent.
Speak.
Deny it. You used to be so proud. Where did that fire go? Refute him. Say you didn't do it. I tugged at the corner of my lips and pushed her away. He's not wrong. I did it. The manager suddenly sensed something was off. Miss Knight, you know each other. I know. I cut in, lifting my head to meet her gaze calmly. Miss Knight and I are complete strangers. All she had ever done was leave me like this. Love that replaced itself. I had watched that familiar face change from timid and fragile to someone who could stand on her own. Sadie had been my nanny since she was very young. Back then, she was small and barely spoke. My mother said she was there to take care of me, but looking back now, it felt more like I had been the one taking care of her. I used to tease her on purpose, dragging her out to play just to see her blush and bashfulness. Whenever I told her she was the prettiest, she would stomp her foot and deny it, stumbling over her words. You look good too. Really handsome. Once she stayed up all night, learning from other girls, and folded an entire jar of paper stars for me. When she gave it to me, she was so shy she could barely meet my eyes, softly asking me not to fall for anyone else. Would always stand behind me, murmuring under her breath, "Ian, my Ian." She was like my little shadow. Aside from me, hardly anyone else could get her to do anything. When I was 16, I was kidnapped by enemies. The abandoned warehouse collapsed with a deafening crash. I remembered hearing people say there was no saving me. But Sadie came dragging her injured leg behind her. She dug through the rubble with her bare hands until she pulled me out. She collapsed into my arms, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. After that, she disappeared for a month. She had been hospitalized in the ICU, and her leg had nearly been lost. The day she woke up, I pulled her into my arms, my eyes burning red, but she only smiled and said, "Don't cry, you won't look good with swollen eyes." I kissed her. That same night, she grabbed my sleeve and demanded that I take responsibility. And just like that, we started dating in secret. My mother tried again and again to stop us, but Sadie would rather be driven out than break up with me. In the end, people in our circle started calling her the embodiment of unwavering love. For over a decade after that, our story was still talked about later. When my mother fell gravely ill and was on the verge of death, Sadie took care of her day and night, barely getting rest herself. With red-rimmed eyes, she kneeled beside my mother's hospital bed and swore, "I truly love Ian, ma'am. If you allow us to be together, I'll take care of him for the rest of my life. I'll make him happy. You have my word." Before my mother passed, she reached out and gently touched Sadie's head. Sadie clutched her hand in return. "Sadie, I only have this one child. Don't hurt him. He has no one else left." Sadie swore on her life that she would belong only to me, that she would love only me for the rest of her life.
I felt for her.
So, I willingly handed the company over for her to manage. The time she truly proved herself after taking over. She never rested. She pulled in clients, secured investments, and expanded the business relentlessly in the shortest time possible. She turned Corvette Company into something powerful and thriving. By the end of that year, she put on a wedding dress and proposed to me herself. We had a wedding that captured everyone's attention. When she turned back to look at me, her eyes were already red with emotion. She stumbled into my arms, her voice trembling. "Thank you for giving me a home in this lifetime. We won't abandon each other no matter what." We built a happy little home together, not wanting to wear myself out. Sadie hired a housekeeper to help take care of things. And that man was Finn Walker. He came from the countryside, strong-built and tan-skinned. He was not educated, but he worked hard and did everything he could. Lady had spent a considerable amount to bring him in. I laughed at her for being foolish, but she rose on her toes and kissed me. "As long as it helps ease your burden, I'm willing to give anything.
Just don't leave me."
Finn was diligent, but his good intentions often caused trouble. I'd tidy up and throw away my old belongings, break expensive bottles while organizing the wine cabinet, or accidentally delete important files. After shutting down Sadie's computer, Sadie was so frustrated she tried to fire him more than once. I talked her out of it, insisting that he stay because I thought he had nowhere else to go. She would often grumble that I did not care about her enough, but still treated Finn kindly out of respect for me. And somehow he stayed. And little by little, he took over everything that used to be mine. And somehow I became the outsider. Finn always acted timid around me, fear hiding in his eyes. I smiled and reassured him that this was his home. Too moved, he gripped my hand.
"Thank you, Ian.
You treat me better than my parents ever did. I'll repay you." One day I laughed and punched his shoulder, taking the initiative to teach him business, dress him better, and introduce him to high society. I thought it would make my wife's life easier. I genuinely wanted him to succeed, and he did. He became confident and articulate, and I often introduced him as my brother. Then Sadie began to change. Gifts were bought in pairs. She flirted with him and taught him personally at the office, displaying unnatural patience. I warned her gently, but she scoffed. "He's driven. It doesn't hurt to guide him. It gives me more time for you later. You're the only one I love." Soon, they were spending every moment together. Finn praised my cooking, while Sadie claimed she just wanted to cling to me forever. Then the video surfaced online. Finn pinning Sadie against her office windowsill. I ran to the company like a madman, bursting into the office with a spatula still in hand. I grabbed her chin in rage. How could you betray me? She was still nibbling Finn's ear.
Not even glancing at me.
Possessive freak. She sneered, shoving me. Finn's mortified. If you keep making a scene, how is he supposed to stand his ground?
Some shame.
I slammed her against the wall. You made a national scandal. She threw hot coffee in my face,
Scalding my skin.
clear his name. Instead of causing trouble, all you do is bully him. Finn pulled her into his chest, comforting her. It's fine.
Hit me if it helps, Ian.
I won't fight back. Sadie had security drag me out in front of everyone. I tried exposing their betrayal online, but the scandal vanished overnight. Sadie held a press conference, calmly declaring I was mentally unstable. My partner is paranoid and hostile toward Finn. But considering the Corbett family's past kindness, I won't abandon him. Corbett Company became Night Company. She forged evidence, forced me to apologize to Finn publicly, and Finn generously played the forgiving victim at home. She dug her high heels into my stomach and smashed my fingers with a hammer, warning me never to touch him again. She forced me to kneel and apologized to Finn for ruining his reputation, then arranged to commit me to an asylum. Then she found out she was pregnant with my child. I begged on my knees.
Keep the baby.
I'll never cause trouble again. She stayed silent, then wrapped her arms around me. Ian, let's stop fighting. Let me make a life with you. She sent Finn away. I catered to her every need, and for a few months, peace returned. Then in her third trimester, she began staying out late again, reeking of his cologne. Have you thought about the baby you're carrying? I demanded, grabbing her wrist. She turned away cold as ice and put me under 24/7 surveillance. The rumors never stopped. She even gave birth in a hotel with Finn by her side. She handed me the premature baby like trash. I named him Ethan Corbett, making him my sole reason to live for 3 years. I poured everything into him. Then Sadie took him away because Finn casually mentioned wanting to try fatherhood. She took them traveling, posting photos of their perfect family. Heartbroken, I went to Ethan's kindergarten to pick him up. I'm his father, I told the teacher. No, he's not. Ethan hid behind the teacher,
Glaring at me.
You're a bad man. An ugly control freak. No wonder mommy doesn't want you. I only want daddy, Finn. I grabbed his hands, shaking. Your name is Ethan Corbett. Why force him? Ian? Finn walked up and Ethan rushed into his arms without hesitation. They begged me to stay every day.
Finn Schmierket.
Ethan even wants a sister.
But I said no.
So she terminated it. If I were you, I'd have ended it all. Enraged, I threw a punch, only to be kicked to the ground by Sadie. How dare you touch Finn? Look at you. What makes you think you're fit to be a father? A passing car crushed my hand. I abandoned my last shred of dignity, clinging to her leg. Sadie, give him back. He's all I have left. She pushed me away coldly. Ask yourself why he hates you. All you do is cry and make scenes. Learn from Finn, will you? A title is just a label.
Don't be so petty.
He's my son, my blood.
I roared.
Ethan bit my hand violently. I hate you. Mommy hates you too. Daddy, Finn is my real family. They walked away, leaving me disgraced in public. The next day, Sadie legally changed his name to Ethan Walker. Sadie would not give me any money, so I could not even make it to the hospital. I did not know how many days I had lain at home before Ethan came. For a moment, I thought I was imagining things. He stood in front of me holding a cup of water, his eyes lowered.
Dad.
I thought it was an illusion. When he handed me a cup of water drink, I believed him without hesitation and drained it in one go, not leaving a single drop. I pulled him into my arms, trembling, my chest aching unbearably. Ethan, say it again? His body stiffened. Gradually, something felt wrong with my body. Only then did I realize that something had been put in the water. As my breathing grew labored, he shoved me away and ran. You're so gullible. If Dad hadn't promised me candy, I wouldn't have called you that.
You.
He did not even look back. I stared at his retreating figure. No strength left even to breathe.
What?
The poison did not kill me. It was not out of mercy from Finn Walker, nor was it because the dose was light. It was simply because my stomach had been empty for 3 days, and when the corrosive chemical hit my lining, my body violently purged most of it before it could absorb entirely into my bloodstream. I lay on the ice-cold floor of my stripped apartment for 36 hours, bathed in my own sweat and stomach fluid, listening to the drip of a broken pipe in the ceiling. When I finally woke, my throat burned like swallowed embers.
My vision was
clouded with broken blood vessels. I did not call an ambulance. I had no money left, no insurance under my name, and no desire to hear the pity of strangers. I dragged myself to the bathroom, sink, drank cold tap water until my stomach cramped, and looked into the mirror. The man staring back was 28 years old, but his eyes belonged to a
corpse.
The soft, gentle light that Sadie had once claimed was her refuge was
Gone.
in its place was nothing, not even hatred. Hatred required energy, and I had used the last of mine believing a child's lie. That was the night Ian Corbett died. The man who stood up from that bathroom floor was merely an engine made of quiet bone and scarred tissue. Miss Knight, did you hear me? The clothing store manager's voice dragged me back into the glaring white, fluorescent light of the boutique. He was still sneering at me, his polished shoes resting inches from mine. If this trash is bothering you, I'll throw him out onto the curb right now. We don't need thieves ruining the atmosphere for high-profile clients like you. Sadie didn't answer him. Her face was chalky white, her fingers trembling against the side of her designer handbag. She stepped forward, her expensive perfume, the customized sandalwood scent I had commissioned for her 25th birthday, filling the tight space between us. Ian, she whispered, her voice cracking slightly. Look at me. I did not look up. I continued folding a heavy woolen coat on the display table, smoothing out the wrinkles with my left hand while keeping my right, the deformed one, tucked neatly inside my apron pocket. The gentleman asked if you required assistance with your purchase. I said, my tone flat, unhurried, and perfectly professional. If not, the fitting rooms are to your left. Stop it. Sadie grabbed my arm. Her grip was tight, desperate, her nails digging into the cheap fabric of my work shirt. Stop talking to me like that. You know who I am. You are a customer of Vane and Company, I replied, gently but firmly prying her fingers off my sleeve. My skin felt cold where she touched it. And I am an associate. Nothing more. Liar. Ethan screamed from behind her. The 7-year-old boy stepped up, his face twisted in a scowl that looked terrifyingly like Finn's calculated sneers. He grabbed a rack of silk ties and yanked them off their hangers, scattering them across the dusty floor. He's a liar, Mommy. Daddy said he's an ex-con.
He
Stole Daddy's watch. He tried to hurt me when I was little. The manager gasped in exaggerated horror. Stole Mr. Walker's watch? Good Lord.
Hey, Corbett.
Pack your things and get out. You're fired. I didn't flinch. I didn't beg. 3 years ago, a command like that would have sent me into a panic, wondering how I would buy bread or afford the rent for my damp basement room. Today, it was just noise. I reached behind my back, untied the knot of my black apron, and laid it neatly over the edge of the counter. My final paycheck can be sent to my address on file, I said to the manager. There are 42 minutes remaining on my shift. You may deduct that from the balance.
Ian.
Wait. Sadie lunged forward, catching my left sleeve as I turned toward the staff room. Her eyes were wide, brimming with tears that threatened to spill over her manicured cheeks. Where are you going? You can't just leave like this. I've been fired, Miss Knight, I said calmly. Staying would violate store policy. I don't care about the store. She almost shrieked, her voice echoing off the high ceilings of the luxury mall. Passers-by began to slow down, peeking through the glass display windows. I didn't tell him to fire you. Manager, hire him.
Back.
Right now. Regional manager scrambled, looking terrified. Miss Knight, but Mr. Walker said. I don't give a damn what Finn said. Sadie roared, losing her legendary corporate composure entirely. She grabbed my hand, the deformed one, pulling it out of my pocket despite my resistance. When she saw it in the bright light, her breath hitched. The middle two knuckles were fused together at an impossible, jagged angle. The skin was dark and scarred where the hammer had shattered the bones years ago, and the thumb remained permanently locked inward. It looked like a withered
branch.
Your hand, she stammered, her thumb instinctively reaching out to trace the ruin she had caused. Why didn't you get it fixed? I gave you money. I left a check at the hospital. There was no check, Miss Knight, I said quietly, pulling my hand out of her
grip.
And even if there had been, shattered bones do not reset themselves after 3 days without medical care. She stared at her empty palm, frozen. What do you mean, 3 days? It doesn't matter, I said, turning away. It is old news. Mommy.
Come on.
Ethan tugged hard at her skirt, his small face contorted with anger. Why are you talking to him? He's gross. Daddy is waiting in the car.
He
said we were going to get ice cream. Sadie looked down at her son, then back at me. For the first time in 7 years, I saw a flicker of horror in her eyes, not at me, but at the child she had
Raised.
Ethan, she whispered, her voice trembling violently. What did you say? He's gross. Ethan spat, kicking my shin with his polished leather shoe.
Daddy.
Said, he's just a dog that used to live in our house. I didn't even react to the kick. The pain in my leg was nothing compared to the phantom aches in my hand on rainy nights. Have a good day, Miss Knight, I said, stepping past her toward the back door. Give my regards to Mr. Walker. The rain started at 5 in the afternoon. I sat in my small, single-room apartment on the northern edge of the city.
It
was a miserable place. The plaster was peeling. The window leaked a thin stream of water down the sill, and the radiator clanked like a dying engine every 20 minutes. But it was quiet. And more importantly, it was mine. I lit a small gas burner and placed a cheap metal kettle on top. A knock echoed at the door. It wasn't a tentative knock. It was frantic, sharp, and desperate. I didn't move for a long moment. I watched the water begin to simmer in the kettle, bubbles rising slowly from the bottom. When the knocking grew louder, accompanied by the sound of heavy rain beating against the outer hallway, I walked over and opened it. Sadie stood in the doorway. She had no umbrella. Her designer silk blouse was soaked through, clinging to her skin, and her expensive hair had fallen out of its neat bun, hanging in damp, dark strands around her face. She looked smaller than she had in the store, frail, trembling, and utterly stripped of the formidable CEO Knight persona the financial news loved to talk about. Behind her, parked in the narrow, mud-slicked alleyway outside my building, was a sleek black Maybach. The hazard lights flashed red against the dark brick walls. Ian, she gasped, her breath coming in shivers. I found your address from the store records. I paid the manager. You shouldn't have done that, I said, holding the door half closed. It's a waste of money. Ian, please. She reached out, trying to push the door open, but I held my ground without applying much force. She looked into my face, searching for a trace of anger, resentment, or pain. Anything she could fight or apologize to. But she found only an empty room. Why are you living like this? She wept, the rain on her face mixing with real
tears now.
The Corbett family? You own half the city. You built Knight Company. How can you live in a dump like this? The Corbett family is dead, Sadie, I said softly. My mother died in a hospital bed 7 years ago after making you swear to care for me. You took the company. You took the house. You took my son. I live here because it is what I can afford. I gave you a settlement, she cried out. When the divorce went through, I put $5 million into an account for you. The lawyer said you signed the papers. I looked at her for a long moment. Then, a tiny, dry chuckle escaped my lips. $5 million? I asked. Finn handed me an envelope with $3,000 in cash 3 years ago. He told me if I ever contacted the police or tried to claim a single penny of the Corbett estate, he would have Ethan put into a private boarding school overseas where I would never see him again. Sadie froze. The color drained completely from her lips. What did you say? Finn signed the final divorce papers as your legal power of attorney while I was locked in the psychiatric ward. I continued, my voice steady, as if reading a grocery list. He liquidated my personal accounts. He took my mother's
Jewelry.
And when I was finally released, he had your security detail throw me into the alley behind the office. No. Sadie shook her head, her hands flying to her mouth. No.
Finn
He told me you took the money and left.
He said you bought an
apartment in the South and didn't want anything to do with Ethan because he reminded you of the past. Did you believe him? I asked. The question hung in the cold air of the hallway, heavy as lead. Sadie couldn't answer. Her eyes darted back and forth, swimming in guilt and realization. Of course you believed him, I said quietly, because it was easier.
It was
easier to believe I was a bitter, broken lunatic who abandoned his family than to admit that the man you brought into our home was a snake. Ian, I didn't know. It doesn't matter anymore, Sadie. I began to close the door. It has been 3 years.
I have settled into my life.
I work, I eat, I sleep. I do not think about Knight Company. I do not think about Finn, and I do not think about you. Ian, don't close the door. She slammed her palms against the wood, weeping. Openly now.
Please.
I came to bring you back. Ethan? Ethan needs his real father. Finn has been changing lately. He's yelling at Ethan, he's spending millions on bad investments, She stopped, realizing what she was saying. He is your husband, Sadie, I said through the small crack in the door.
And
Ethan is his son now. You changed his legal name to Ethan Walker. You erased me. Do not come back here.
Ian.
I clicked the lock into place. Outside, the rain continued to pour. For 20 minutes, I heard her sobbing. Against the thin wooden panel, her knuckles tapping softly, weakly, begging me to open up. I didn't. I sat down at my small wooden table, poured my hot water into a chipped mug, and drank it in silence. The world of high finance in our city was small. Though I had been buried at the very bottom of society for 3 years, news still traveled down through the
cracks.
Finn Walker was not a businessman. He was a housekeeper who had learned how to wear a bespoke suit. When I ran Corbett Company, I managed risk with extreme caution, relying on decades of my family's institutional knowledge and deep relationships with legacy banking houses. When Sadie took over, she was brilliant at execution. She had the drive and the ruthlessness to expand rapidly. But when Sadie began handing operational control over to Finn to ease her burden and validate his fragile ego, the collapse became inevitable. 3 days after Sadie appeared at my doorway, the financial section of the morning paper carried a subtle headline: Knight Enterprises faces liquidity crunch amid ambiguous overseas investments. I read the article over a 5-cent cup of black coffee at a roadside stand. Finn had funneled nearly 40% of the company's liquid reserves into a fake tech startup based in Southeast Asia, a classic advance fee scam operated by shell companies. He had done it to prove he was smarter than I had ever been, desperate to show the board that he didn't need the ghost of Ian Corbett guiding the firm. Now, the banks were calling in their short-term loans. Hey, buddy, the stand owner said, tossing a damp rag over his shoulder.
You
used to work in corporate, right? Is that Knight company really going under? It seems likely, I said, folding the paper cleanly. Serves them right, the owner grunted. That woman who runs it
stole it from
her ex-husband, they say. Left the guy with nothing. Karma's a real bitch. I didn't comment. I placed a few coins on the counter and walked toward the
docks.
I didn't work at the clothing store anymore, but I hadn't been idle over the last 3 years. While Sadie and Finn believed I was rotting in obscurity, I had been quietly rebuilding the only thing Finn couldn't steal from me: my mind. I had no capital, but I had memory. I remembered every contract, every non-disclosure agreement, every hidden patent application my father had filed before his death. More importantly, I remembered the private ledger my mother had kept, a ledger detailing the origin of the initial startup capital for Corbett Company, which was held in a blind trust under my mother's maiden name, untouched by the corporate restructuring Sadie had engineered. 2 years ago, when my hand had healed enough to hold a pen again, I had contacted my mother's old family attorney, Mr. Vance. Mr. Vance was 80 years old, retired, and living in a quiet seaside town. When he saw me, scarred, skinny, wearing clothes from a charity bin, the old man had wept. They told me you were dead, Ian, Mr. Vance had said, his hands shaking as he
poured me tea.
Finn Walker brought a death certificate signed by a doctor at the state asylum. I am not dead, Mr. Vance, I had replied. Not yet. Together, for 24 months, we had been quietly filing claims in out-of-state jurisdictions, asserting my rights over the blind trust. 3 weeks ago, the final judicial decree had cleared. The trust contained $12 million in liquid blue-chip stock and original patent rights to the underlying logistics algorithm that powered Knight Company's entire supply chain. I didn't want revenge. Revenge was an emotional response, and emotion was a luxury I could no longer afford. I simply wanted what was mine. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the nightmare inside the Walker Knight household finally spilled out into the open. I was sitting in Mr. Vance's office in the financial district, reviewing the revoking documents for Knight Company's software license, when my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered it. Hello, Ian. It was Sadie. Her voice was barely a whisper, drowned out by the sound of glass breaking and violent screaming in the background. Ian, help me, please. He's gone crazy. Miss Knight, I said calmly, setting down my pen. If you are experiencing domestic violence, you should call the police. The police won't come, she sobbed hysterically. Finn found out about the offshore accounts being frozen. He knows the bank is foreclosing on the
House.
He's been drinking. He hit Ethan? He hit Ethan. My heart gave a single, dull thud.
Ethan.
The boy who had bitten my thigh. The boy who had handed me a cup of poison water with a smile. The boy who had called me an ugly, dirty dog. Ethan has a father, I said, my voice dropping an octave, cold as marble.
His
name is Finn Walker. He chose him.
No.
He's your son. Sadie screamed into the receiver. I heard a muffled thud, followed by Ethan's shrill, panicked crying. Mommy, he's breaking my
toys. Daddy, stop.
Then Finn's slurred, furious voice roared. Shut up, you little brat. You're not my son. You're just a bastard I used to keep your mother in line. Silence fell over the line for 3 seconds before Sadie's voice returned, breathless and terrified. Ian, he's coming for the safe. He has a gun. Please, the villa in the west suburbs, please. The line went dead. Mr. Vance looked up from his desk, his thick brows furrowed with concern. Ian, what was that? I sat quietly for 5 seconds. I looked down at my deformed fingers. The pain wasn't there today. It wasn't raining. But the memory of the hammer hitting my knuckles echoed in the back of my skull. Sadie had stood by and watched Finn crush my hand. She had forged my madness. She had given my son to a predator to appease her own sick, guilt-ridden desire for a new life. Ian? Mr. Vance asked again. Are you going to call the authorities? Yes, I said smoothly, picking up the desk phone. I will call the sheriff's department to report an armed disturbance at the Knight estate. And then, Mr. Vance, I want you to file the emergency injunction against Knight Company's bank accounts. Now, I said. It is time to close the book. By the time I arrived at the suburban villa in a hired taxi, the rain had returned in full force. The iron gates of the estate were wide open, one side hanging crookedly off its hinges where a car had smashed into it. 2 police cruisers were already parked in the driveway, their blue and red lights flashing against the white marble facade of the mansion I had once spent 3 years designing. I stepped out of the taxi, holding a plain black umbrella over my head. A police officer stepped forward to block me. Sir, this is a crime scene. You need to stand back. I am Ian Corbett, I said quietly. I am the owner of this property. Corbett. The officer paused, checking his notepad. The ex-husband? Before he could answer, the front double doors of the mansion burst open. 2 officers pulled a man out in handcuffs. It was Finn Walker. He looked pathetic. His expensive bespoke suit was torn at the shoulder, covered in dirt and bloodstains. His hair was wild, his eyes bloodshot and frantic. Gone was the arrogant, smooth-talking houseman who had pinned my wife against her desk while I stood outside with a spatula. Let go of me, Finn screamed, spitting blood onto the wet gravel. I own this place. I'm the CEO of Knight Enterprises. Sadie, tell them who I am. Sadie stepped out onto the porch behind him. She was wrapped in a yellow emergency blanket, her face bruised along the jawline, her lips split. She looked utterly destroyed, not just physically, but as if her soul had been scooped out and discarded. Beside her stood Ethan. The 7-year-old boy was shaking violently, clutching a tear-stained stuffed bear to his chest. When Finn saw me standing by the gate under my black umbrella, his eyes widened with pure, manic hatred. You, Finn shrieked, struggling against the 2 officers holding him. You did this. You froze the accounts. You tipped off the audit committee. You broken bastard. I didn't answer him. I stood motionless under the umbrella, watching him rage, like a rabid dog in a cage. I should have killed you 3 years ago, Finn roared, his voice cracking with desperation. I should have put more poison in that water. You were supposed to die in that trash heap. The police officer stiffened. One of them immediately pulled out a recording device. Statement recorded. Mr. Walker, you are under arrest for attempted murder, domestic battery, and grand larceny. No. Finn panicked, realizing what he had just blurted out. I didn't mean that. It was a joke. Sadie, tell them. Sadie didn't look at Finn. She didn't even acknowledge his existence. Her eyes were fixed entirely on me. She walked down the wet marble steps, ignoring the rain falling on her bare shoulders, until she was standing 5 feet away from me on the other side of the police tape. He tried to take everything, she whispered, her voice lifeless. He had a secret account in the Caymans. He was planning to leave tonight with Ethan's Trust fund. I know, I said. You knew? A man who betrays his benefactor to take his wife will eventually betray the wife to take her money, I said softly. It is simple mathematics, Sadie.
He was.
Never a master strategist. He was just a greedy houseman, and you were too, blinded by your own guilt and desire for control to see it. Sadie fell to her knees in the wet gravel. The yellow blanket slipped from her shoulders into the mud.
She reached out with
Both hands trying to grab the hem of my trousers, exactly as I had grabbed her. Like 3 years ago when she took Ethan away. Ian? I'm sorry, she sobbed, her face pressed near my boots. I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I thought I was protecting you. I thought if I gave him the company, he would leave us alone. I was so stupid. Ian, please. I stepped back, avoiding her touch. You were not trying to protect me, Sadie, I said down to her. You were bored. You liked the feeling of raising a man up from nothing just like my family. Raised you up from nothing. You wanted to be the master. You wanted Finn to depend on you, and when he gave you cheap passion, you traded your dignity for
it.
No, Ian. And when I became an inconvenience, a reminder of your disloyalty, you let him smash my hand. You let him put me in an asylum. I looked down at her dark, tear-streaked face. You broke the promise you made to my dying mother. At the mention of my mother, Sadie let out a sound that wasn't human, a raw, strangulated shriek of absolute horror. Daddy. A small, trembling voice broke through the noise of the rain and Sadie's
sobbing.
I turned my head slightly. Ethan had walked down the steps. He was standing near the police car, his small shoes soaked through, staring at me with big, wide eyes filled with fear and confusion. He took a hesitant step toward me. Daddy. He whimpered, using the word he had refused to say in the clothing
store.
Daddy. Finn hit Mommy. He broke my room. I want to go home with you. He reached out his tiny, clean hand toward me, the hand that had once held a cup of poisoned tap water, and offered it to me with a smile. I looked at the child. I looked at his face, a face that carried my cheekbones, my mother's dark eyes, and my family's brow. For 3 years, I had poured every ounce of love I possessed into his infant life. I had stayed up through feverish nights, rocked him to sleep, sung him the old lullabies my mother used to sing to me. And in return, he had been taught to hate me. He had been turned into a weapon by the people I trusted most. Ethan, I said gently. The boy's face lit up with a faint flicker of hope. He took another step forward. Daddy, you're gonna take us home, right? You're rich again, right? I kneeled down in the rain, bringing myself to his eye level, keeping 3 feet of distance between us. Do you remember what you said to me at the kindergarten, Ethan? I asked, my voice calm, warm, and entirely devoid of anger. The boy blinked, lowering his head nervously. I didn't mean it, Daddy. Finn told me to say it. Do you remember what you said in the store 3 days ago? I continued, smoothly. You said I was ugly. You said my stuff was dirty and disgusting. You said it would be better if I died so Daddy Finn would be happy.
Ian.
He's just a child. Sadie screamed from the mud, trying to scramble up. He didn't know what he was doing. Finn brainwashed him. Silence, Sadie, I said without looking at her. I kept my eyes on Ethan. The boy was starting to cry now, tears mixing with the rain on his cheeks, realizing that the gentle man he used to walk over was no longer there. You chose your father, Ethan, I said to the boy, speaking to him not as a child to be coddled, but as a person who had made a choice. You called him Dad. You took his name. You gave me a cup of water that nearly killed me so he would buy you candy. I was hungry. Ethan sobbed, wiping his nose with his sleeve. Actions have consequences, young man, I said softly. Even for children. I am not your father anymore. Your father is sitting in the back of that police car, heading to prison. No. Ethan burst into frantic shrieks, lunging forward to grab my coat.
No. I
want you to be my dad. You're my dad. I stood up fluidly, stepping out of his reach. Mr. Vance. I called out to the lawyer, who was standing near the taxi holding a leather briefcase. Yes, Ian? Proceed with the full asset seizure of Knight Enterprises, I said, my voice carrying clearly over the sound of the rain and the sirens. Reclaim the Corbett. Name for the firm. Evict all residents from this property by noon tomorrow. Understood.
Ian.
No. Please. Sadie dragged herself across the gravel, grabbing the bottom of my trousers with her bloody, rain-soaked hands. Don't do this. Where will we go? We have nothing left. Everything is under Knight Enterprises. You have what you brought into my life when you were a nanny, Sadie, I said,
looking down at her one last time.
Nothing. I turned my back on them.
Ian.
Ian, she screamed, her voice breaking into ragged, hopeless sobs that were eventually swallowed by the roar of the wind.
Ian.
Come back. I love you. I've always loved you. I did not look back. I walked to the taxi, opened the door, and got inside. As the car pulled away from the gates of the villa, I looked out the rear window. In the fading twilight, under the glaring red lights of the police cruisers, Sadie Knight was kneeling in the dirt, clutching her child, as the home she had stolen dissolved into the rain behind them. 6 months later, the spring sun was warm over the central plaza of the financial district. The large digital billboard atop the 30-story headquarters building flashed. A new announcement: Corbett Logistics Group restricted restructuring complete. Ian Corbett appointed chairman. Inside the top-floor office, the high glass windows provided a panoramic view of the entire city. The room was sparse, elegant, and filled with a faint, crisp scent of fresh pine. I sat behind the mahogany desk, the same desk my father had used 30 years ago. My right hand rested on the polished wood. It was still deformed, the middle knuckles fused and scarred. I no longer wore gloves to hide it, nor did I tuck it into my pocket. It was a part of me, a reminder of the storm I had walked through and the man I had left behind in the mud. A soft knock came at the door. My assistant, a sharp young woman named Clara, stepped inside.
Chairman.
Corbett, your 2 p.m. appointment is here. But there is someone waiting in the lobby downstairs.
Who?
A woman, Clara said carefully. She has been sitting on the bench outside for hours. Security offered to remove her, but she isn't causing a disturbance. She just asked if she could leave something for you. Clara walked over and set a small, heavy glass jar on my desk. Inside the jar were hundreds of carefully folded paper stars, made from yellowed, faded craft paper. Some of the edges were dark with dried water.
Stains.
I looked at the jar for a long moment. Did she leave a message? I asked. She said. Clara hesitated, checking her note.
She said to tell you that the
shadow has finally left the sun. She said she is taking the boy back to the countryside, to the small house near the mountains where her family used to
live.
She said she will work to pay back the legal judgments against her, even if it takes the rest of her life. I reached out and touched the glass of the jar with my scarred fingers. Inside my mind, a memory flashed briefly, a 16-year-old girl with bruised knees, digging through tons of concrete rubble with her bare hands until her fingernails tore off, screaming my name until her throat bled. Don't cry, she had smiled through her tears when she woke up in the ICU.
You
won't look good with swollen eyes. That girl had died long ago, buried under the weight of greed, insecurity, and hubris. And the boy she had saved had died in an icy basement 3 years ago. Take it, I said quietly, pulling my hand back. Clara paused. Sir, throw it in the trash, I said, my voice perfectly steady, free of malice, free of regret, and free of pain. And tell security to make sure the lobby remains clear for our clients. Yes, Chairman. Clara picked up the glass jar and walked out of the office, closing the heavy oak door softly behind her. I turned my chair toward the window. Outside, the sky was completely clear. The sun was bright, warm, and endless.
I
took a deep, quiet breath of the clean air, picked up my pen with my left hand, and went back to work.